Welcome to Stage Time Podcast. I'm Travis Valle, your host, and this is the podcast where normally we interview comedians and talk about hallmark experiences in their comedy careers, but unfortunately, due to my schedule, I was unable to meet up with anyone to interview, so I'm going to try something new in order to put some content out there, which is I'm going to do a sort of reaction, review. I'm going to prefer to look at it as a reflect video, where I look at one of my very first open mic stand-ups, and I'm going to talk about some things on there. I'm going to reflect on some of the things I did, ways that I've developed and changed. Now, this open mic is significant in that, for one, it's got to be like my fourth or fifth time doing stand-up comedy. So it's still very early on. It's not my first time. I didn't record my first time, unfortunately, which if anyone out there is thinking about doing it, I highly recommend that you do, if anything, for the memories of it. But as you continue and develop as a comedian, you might find it interesting to work on this and look back and see what you did wrong, see what you did right, and try to improve on yourself. So because this podcast is kind of talking about experiences like that, I'm going to try to honestly review and reflect on one of my early stand-up days. Now, something that makes this significant is that it was my first time performing in DC, which to me felt like a big deal because it felt like it performing in a place like DC, even though it's an open mic, well, sort of, I'm going to get to that in a second, but I felt that gave some legitimacy to my comedy. So I felt pretty proud of doing that. I invited family members out. I had a few aunts and uncles. I had one aunt and a couple uncles come out, and it was a pretty cool experience. Now, a little bit more background I want to give to you, because I'm going to try to put this in context. DC, at the time at least, had open mics, but they weren't really, in order to get on, I had to send in a video submission. So I did perform before this well enough that apparently they screened me and said, okay, you can get on this. This is at a place called the Dig Hunt. Dig Hunt. I know it, for me, it kind of runs together. It is put on by Underground Comedy, which I think is still active, but kind of in a much larger aspect. I performed a 5-minute set, and I think I did pretty good. I'll tell you a little bit about what I remember from that night. For one thing, when I met the comedians in DC, at least I hadn't met anyone before at this mic. To me, they felt like they were a little bit standoffish. They weren't very welcoming. I don't know if they just thought I was some tourist who wasn't going to be around long, so they didn't take the time to kind of bring me in. But when I talked to them, I remember thinking, they seemed pretty indifferent. They'd just be like, hey, what's up? I'm Travis. And they'd be like, cool, and, go on about their day. The host was nice enough. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he was kind of concentrated on putting on the show and making sure everything's in order. But he, and you'll see him a little bit in this clip, he, for the most part, was good. He pronounced my name right, which is cool. Most people have difficulty with that. But for the most part, the other comedians, I felt, were a bit standoffish. And kind of working on the comedy venues that I've worked here in the Shenandoah Valley, a lot of us seem to be a little bit more welcoming, which is cool. So that was one thing I kind of took away immediately from my DC experience. I'll try to contextualize a little bit more. When I first started off, I was particularly dark and edgy, so there are some things in here that I don't do or say anymore because I feel I've matured a bit. It might still be funny, but I just don't necessarily, especially the sexual jokes I'll do, I don't super feel comfortable doing them now. Maybe it's because I have a wife and kid, but I am going to review that. This clip, I have a few clips early on. If this goes well, maybe I'll review another early stand-up. But I just want to kind of put that in context before I dive into it. I also have a very duct tape setup, so I'm not really set up to do reviews, and I'm going to try to screen record this. Hopefully it screen records everything well enough. I'm going to make sure the volume's kind of up on here. But I will try to sync these as close together so that when I pause and make comments, it'll go well. So I do that by, right now, I'm hitting screen record. Alright. It is recording, so let's jump into it. I'm going to hit play on my video now. Wait, no, sorry. Now.
Close enough.
All right.
How's everyone doing? I don't care. Fuck it. I almost didn't come out.
Okay, so right away, I guess he didn't pronounce it right because I said close enough. I remember that. Yeah, I was referring to his name. So, oh well. As you can see, I'm already kind of awkward. Throughout this whole set, you're going to notice I don't really make eye contact with the crowd or the audience. You do see what looks like a decent audience in front of me. There is, I think, at least one more row behind that. This was years ago, so it's kind of hard to remember. But I definitely remember there was space off to the left. That's where the bar and standing room was, so there were people there. It was a decently packed place. And so I was understandably nervous, and you're going to see some nervous ticks in here that I'll try to go over, but this is me with my opening joke, and let's see how it goes.
Close enough.
All right.
How's everyone doing? I don't care. Fuck it. I almost didn't come out tonight because I've been living in a pretty dark place recently, and some of my friends say it's my own fault because of the choices I made. I mean, others say it's because I didn't pay my electric bill, but I mean, in a way, they're both right.
All right, so that was my opener, which I remember I liked that joke because it is kind of my style in that there's a plot twist. It gets darker. I deliberately tried to open up with a more neutral joke because I want to warm the audience up to it getting darker. I asked the audience how they were and then said, I don't care. I thought that would be like a little funny thing. I'm trying my best to kind of play it cool, but you can kind of tell I'm nervous. But no, that joke was good, and I haven't done that one in a while. I've actually started to try to reincorporate that into my normal sets because I think that's a good opener. And I'm getting kind of bored of the normal opener I do. But they laughed, so already I'm feeling pretty good, which is always good. You want to get them laughing within the first, 20 seconds. The timestamp says 27, so yeah, let's keep going.
So I want to make you guys laugh tonight. I'm very new to stand-up comedy. I read somewhere that comedy is just tragedy plus time. So I'll tell you about my childhood. When I was a kid, my
All right. Yeah, that was one of my favorite jokes to include because that was kind of my philosophy on comedy, which is comedy is just tragedy plus time. That's kind of the old thing. And so that's one of the reasons for my dark humor is I kind of applied that. And I do have a lot of jokes about my childhood. Most of them deeply exaggerated. Some of them just flat out made up. But I feel like that is a good way to kind of touch on the dark comedy. So I leaned into that childhood trauma kind of thing. So I'm going to go into some dark stories, and you can kind of see the reaction of the audience. So that's one of the good things I like about this video too. Is most of my videos, my cameras are behind the audience. This was my aunt or uncle, I can't remember which, recording, and you can see their reactions, which is pretty fun. We're going to continue.
My parents built me a tree house,
right,
and they let me sleep actually plus time. So I'll tell you about my childhood. When I was a kid, my parents built me a tree house, and they let me sleep out in it for the night, and it was a lot of fun. They let me sleep out in the next night after that, till finally my parents had to tell the cops where they left me, and still took the search party a few hours, but.
Yeah, they didn't respond super well to that joke. I have a clip of that where I do that at JMU, where I went to school. They did a comedy open mic night, and it received a much better laugh there. So the joke is that it sounds like my family's going camping or something, but really they just abandoned me in the woods. So I didn't get a great response there. You can see I feel a little awkward. Again, it's worked other places. I don't have the most confidence in that joke now. I haven't done it since very early on. But when I posted it not too long ago as kind of like a throwback thing on my YouTube page at Travis Valle Comedy, it did very well compared to the rest of my videos. So there's something to it, I think. But yeah.
They let me sleep out in the next night after that, till finally my parents had to tell the cops where they left me, and still took the search party a few hours. But
there's a few chuckles.
I got started on musical open mics. My first, I do a lot of music. My first paid gig, I was paid in tips, and I made $2. Just $2. Yeah, I know, right? And my mom, she was very reassuring. She was like, "Well, that's $2 more than you had before." I was like, "Yeah, but parking was $8." So I mean.
Yeah, so that's actually a true story. My first music gig, when I performed music, I did get paid in tips, and I only got $2. And I'm pretty sure the $2 was from the bartender because there was like nobody there except like 3 friends of mine at the time, and maybe another random couple. But yeah, I incorporated a lot of my early music stuff into comedy as well. You can tell, again, I'm uncomfortable the way I'm pacing back and forth. This is not really great stage presence. I'm not saying you shouldn't move around, but I am definitely like pacing, and I'm looking at the ground. I'm not making eye contact, so that's definitely coming up as awkward. Another thing I noticed too is my voice cracks quite a bit in this video, and that's because I was nervous. I was so nervous that my voice was actually cracking. I wanted to make sure I was speaking clearly. I want to make sure that they hear every word I say so that I don't screw up the jokes, but my nerves were definitely getting at me that day, that night.
All right. And my mom, she was very reassuring. She was like, "Well, that's $2 more than you had before." I was like, "Yeah, but parking was $8." So I mean,
I like that.
It's a weird spot, and like, I mean, I had this really awkward sex talk with my mom not too long ago. I mean, that's the last time I called a phone sex hotline. No, but
all right. I do remember. I also had not great memory, and I didn't want to use a notebook in DC. I was trying to like look professional and stuff, even though I'm wearing shorts, which I probably wouldn't do. Well, an open mic, yeah, but on a paid gig, I wouldn't wear shorts for it. But I was trying to look professional. I was trying to look relaxed. But my jokes had segues, so they kind of follow into each other. I think there's one point where I just kind of shift topics, but for the most part, I'm trying to like keep it flowing well so that I remember it better. And I haven't really done that joke anymore. One, it's not super sexual, but I just think phone sex hotlines are kind of outdated now. This would have been, even at the time, it was probably still outdated because it would have been 2017-ish, something like that. But yeah, the next part is going to be a much more sexual joke that I don't really do anymore.
No, but for real, she asked me how old I was when I lost my virginity, and I told her I was 13. She said, 13? That's way too young. She said, "I agree, Mom, but you're the one who wanted me to be an altar boy." And so I've gone back and forth whether or not that joke's hacky. I mean, it's the kind of obvious priest molest altar boy kind of thing. But at the same time, I felt like my setup was creative enough that it was a good plot twist. And the audience, they groaned, but that's kind of the reaction I wanted. So there were laughs, there were groans. We're starting to get into kind of the meat and potatoes of my dark stuff. Which, doing the type of comedy that I do, I've learned to become comfortable with groans and even silence because I know not all the jokes are going to land. That one, again, it might be a little hacky, but I liked it and they went with it. So, the first time I had sex with a woman, it was pretty fun. It was a lot later than most people, and so I thought I was right. I was very nervous anyway, but like I lasted longer than I thought I would. So I was like 30 seconds in, I was like yes, and she wanted to change positions, and I was like okay. But the weird thing is, every porn I've watched, they never showed you how to change positions. It's just always pans from like one position to the next. And so like I had to pull out in order to change positions. And it's a lot like when you go to the movie theater and you take a sip of your drink and you're trying to find the cup holder after you want to put it back. It's like so I wasn't as smooth as I thought I was.
Okay. I just noticed something too. I did not move the mic stand, which is one of the things you're supposed to do. So when you get on stage, you take the microphone out of the stand, or if you're someone who does it in the stand, that's fine too. I guess that's your style. But if you're going to take the microphone out of the stand, you have to move it out of the way. From this angle, you can't tell, but from the audience perspective, I'm sure it's an obstruction. So you take the mic stand, move it out of the way, do your bit. You can lean on it still or whatever if you're someone who does that, but then you reset at the end. So when the next comedian comes on stage, or the host comes back on stage, however it's structured, you put the mic stand back, you put the microphone in the stand, and then you do the high five, fist bump, handshake, whatever, when you switch off. But yeah, that's another thing I just realized with you. Other thing, so the joke, again, it's a sexual humor that I don't really do much anymore. My wife might be watching this. That's one of the reasons I don't do that kind of humor anymore. But I will say that is based on the true story. Other than that, I'm not going to do too much details about the content, but I will say if I were going to redo that joke now, I would definitely chop down on how long it takes to tell it. So I'd cut back on a few words. I'd try to make it flow a little more smoothly because I think it is a funny, relatable story, but I didn't track the seconds, but to me, it seemed like too long for them to laugh. But they did laugh. The reason I noticed the microphone stand was because the few times I did that after, I used the microphone stand when I'm moving the microphone to kind of illustrate the kind of clumsiness of myself in that joke. So, that's a little physical humor. I also don't really do much anymore because I don't want the comedy to come from my actions. I want it to come from my brain. If that makes sense. I want clever writing and smooth jokes to go for it. So, but if you're someone who's active on stage and you like to jump around and stuff, good on you. That's just not my style. So I don't do a lot of that. If you look at my other videos. Sorry, one more thing I want to add to that. Afterwards, when I sat down with my uncles and my aunt, one of them, I forget which one, but they said, I can totally relate. And that was a little awkward, but it was also kind of like, all right, the audience connected with it too, probably. So,
I have a really dark sense of humor. Like I like it's weird because like death just like follows me around my whole life. Like I was.
All right, take a shot every time I say like in that 5 seconds. So again, early times I've learned to be more comfortable on stage with if my brain's buffering trying to think of something, I just go silent. It's okay to have short little pauses. Don't be afraid of the dead silence. And when I did an interview with John Rademacher, he talked about that. Silences are okay. So if you need to think about something for a second, let it be silent. I know it's going to feel like forever, but it's better than saying like 50 times because the audience is going to be annoyed or they're going to tune out. So silence can be like you're building up suspense, but really your brain is buffering because you want to remember the joke. So I'm transitioning into some death jokes that some of them I still do today, and I like them. And you can probably find them posted clip-wise on my channel.
Follows me around my whole life. Like I found a dead body in the woods once, and it was like a horrible experience. And the worst part about it was I had to move the dead body to make room for the body I was trying to bury. And it was like, I mean, I shouldn't complain. It wasn't that hard. It was just a baby. So, I mean.
All right, so they were on board for the first part when I threw in the baby. Some of them might have pulled back a little bit. But again, I'd probably be happy with that reaction. Like, it's better than dead silence, honestly. If you make them feel something, even if it's kind of a horror thing, they do that, but they also might be laughing a little bit. It might be like, oh, no. Like, they're trying to restrain how much they thought it was funny. At least that's what I told myself. But, no, I still like that joke. I still do that joke sometimes during my set. I like a quick one-liner, and it kind of is a good microcosm of my humor. So, and it leads into some other stuff here.
Had a lot of jobs growing up. I used to work at a animal shelter, and I euthanized the cats and dogs until the shelter found out. Then I got fired. I wasn't too upset about it. I mean, I was ready to move on to bigger, better things. So now I work in an abortion clinic, and going really well.
All right, so I still do the animal shelter part. I've kind of cut out the abortion clinic part because, again, my wife doesn't really like it. So, um, but I did kind of develop that tag later to make it more smooth, where I say, now I work at a job where I pretty much get to do the same thing, Planned Parenthood, and but yeah, my wife doesn't like that, so she asked me to not do that. I still do the animal shelter part though, which again, it's a quick little plot twisty joke that I like, a one-liner. And if you notice too, for the most part, my jokes are relatively short. Like I'm just kind of knocking them out because I am not good at long storytelling, and I certainly wasn't going to remember a longer story and still make it funny. I would have tripped up over myself. You can hear how much I'm tripping up now with just these 15, 20-second one-liners. So I try to keep them short, try to keep them brief so that I could remember. But also, in my head, if the audience liked my stuff, that was a joke that they could repeat to their friends relatively easy. Because when I think of comedians like Dave Chappelle, I used to be really into Dane Cook at the time, but these storytellers, I would try to tell my friends one of their jokes, but I'm not them, so I can't like recreate that performance, and it just sounds like a boring story coming from me. I still kind of do that. I have crisp little one-liners, but for the most part, I've broadened out into somewhat longer stories. I still try, for the most part, I try to keep a joke under a minute in total length because the laugh to setup ratio needs to be it, meaning that the longer it takes to set up a joke, the funnier the punchline be, or better be, because if you're going a minute and you're kind of wasting the audience's time for a not funny punchline, then that's going to kill you on stage, and nobody's going to like you. So I try to keep that in mind. You can also add little tags in throughout a long story, so there are little bit of chuckles or laugh breaks before you get to the big punchline. But again, I've gotten better, but I definitely wasn't at a good place to do it at this point in my career. Love that reaction.
Some observational comedy. I've noticed that every group of friends,
That was the most awkward segue transition I tried doing. I literally just said out loud some observational comedy. That was not smooth. This might have gotten to the point where, let's see where we're at. Yeah, about 3 minutes in. Oh, this might have been more of a 4-minute set. This is a shorter set. But it might have gotten to the point where I ran through my jokes faster than I thought I would, so I just started pulling out jokes that I remembered. I'm probably waiting for the light. I don't know when judging by the way I'm holding my hand, I think this is when I get the light, so this is my 1-minute warning. But in my head, I have a minute left. I should come up with some more jokes. Which, heads up, it is okay to finish early. In the context of stand-up comedy. If you are given 5 minutes at an open mic and you only use 4, that's fine. Now, if you're at a gig, they're going to pay you for that amount of time, so you're going to want to fill up that time. But if you're at an open mic, it's okay to stop early. If you're doing a gig and you end it like a minute early, that might be okay if you get a really big laugh. So if you're trying to end on a high note, you might be able to get away with that. But for the most part, bookers are going to be paying you for that time. So I would try to fill it up. But in this case, I went through all the jokes I wanted to do. Still had a minute left, so I'm starting to pull some out of my butt here. Let's see how it goes. That is just so cringy hearing me say observational humor out loud. I think
that's it. Some observational comedy. I've noticed that every group of friends, every single group, has that one fat friend. So if you look around your group of friends and you don't see a fat friend, you know what that means. They probably died of heart disease.
So I still think that joke's funny, but the audience kind of had a mixed reaction to it. I tried doing a fat joke within the past year, and it did not go well. I think people are a little more sensitive to the kind of body shaming, body positivity aspect. I'm not going to gripe too much about that. I mean, I understand that's fine. That just means you have to adapt. There are some jokes where I'm like, this is funny. I don't care who you are. If the certain audiences don't laugh, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it. That one was not a joke that I was willing to, die on a hill for. So I haven't really done it much since. Actually, I don't think I did it after the set, but I've tried experimenting with jokes about sensitive topics. That's kind of what I like to do. Some of them I would, if we didn't have the First Amendment, that's the one I would be willing to go to jail for. Some of them I'm just not, it's not worth the headache of trying to explain to people that I'm a really good guy and this is a persona I can do on stage. So, that's a joke I dropped since then.
Don't see a fat friend, you know what that means. They probably died of heart disease. There's like a weird lagging laugh on that. It's like a YouTube video trying to buffer.
All right, that was actually good. I wasn't super great at that, kind of riffing on stage, and I mean they didn't get a huge laugh out of that, but I was able to respond to the audience reaction. There's a reviewer online who I've sent a few videos in, and he does this professionally. His name is William. Hold on, I'm going to look this up right now. So, William does IG. That's his Instagram handle. His name is William Goulet-Keene. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. He's a comedian, a comedy teacher, and he does live reviews on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch. But he does a lot of the things I'm noticing on myself are things that he's pointed out in some of my other videos and some videos that I've watched him review. So, a lot of it's based on stage presence. I recommend checking his channel out. One of the things he kind of hits on a lot is reacting to the audience and making them feel involved in your set, which he's not necessarily meaning crowd work, but if they give you some sort of input, you've got to give them a reaction. So the audience's kind of awkward, delayed laugh, I addressed that, which is something I actually, for a long time, was not comfortable doing. Only recently, pretty much since I saw that reviewer, I've started to kind of be more aware of that. So if the audience chimes in, I'm not saying like a heckler, you can deal with a heckler, that's a whole other thing I don't want to get into right now, but if they give you a good laugh or if they cheer at something, give them time to react, and then you can kind of acknowledge or respond to that reaction, and that makes them feel more connected to you and to your set. So that was a bit of good advice that I'm going to pass on to you guys. But again, William Goulet-Keene, William does IG. Check him.
Didn't think I'd make it this long. There's like a weird lagging laugh on that. It's like a YouTube video trying to buffer. Didn't think I'd make it this long.
So that's where I got the light. You can see my little motion. That's where you get the light.
Alright, so I was, believe it or not, I was part of the Big Brother, Big Sister program. I had a little brother, and he was obsessed with Batman.
I forgot about this joke. This joke now might seem a little hacky. I thought I was very original with it, but I like this joke. I think I've kind of dropped it since because I think the punchline's too expected, and I think people are now, at least when you kind of have gotten used to my humor at this point, you probably know where this is going. So, but this is, I think, a funny joke, and they actually responded. But they laughed at the part where I said I was part of the Big Brother, Big Sister program, so they're getting to know me. Take this back.
YouTube video trying to buffer. Didn't think I'd make it this long. Alright, so I was, believe it or not, I was part of the Big Brother, Big Sister program. I had a little brother, and he was obsessed with Batman. His, he had Batman posters, Batman bed sheets, Batman, Batman pajamas. And the one thing he didn't have was a Batman, costume, because he was too small at the time. And so his birthday came around, he had a growth spurt, and I decided, you know what, part of this, I'm going to make him feel like Batman. So when his birthday came around, I shot and killed his parents. My name is Shenandoah Valley, thank you. Have a good night.
Oh. So, something I do now. So, I think we can go back to this. Something I do now is that at the very beginning of my sets, I always introduce my name. So I say, hi, my name is Travis Valle, and then I do my first joke. Because my last name is kind of difficult for people to pronounce when you're reading it, as many of you might have gotten from this point. But when I first started off, I was going back and forth. I talked about this with John Rademacher a little bit. I debated going by just Travis V or just anglicizing my name and saying Travis Valle because Valle is Spanish for valley and it was just easier for people to say. So I might have leaned into that a little bit and made it easier for him. He probably said Valle, the host, when he introduced me, and that's why I said close enough. But yeah, it can be difficult. So, but I just decided, screw it, I'm going to use my name. But no, I actually ended on a bigger laugh than I remember. I haven't watched this video in its entirety until really just now, in quite a while. So overall, I would say that was actually a pretty decent set for someone who is at my stage of stand-up comedy. But again, it's worth noting, because I was performing in DC, I kind of put it up on a pedestal and I prepared for it like it was a paid gig. So nowadays when I do open mics, a lot of that is trying out new stuff. I'll do a tried and true joke at the beginning just to kind of build up the audience momentum, getting laughing, but then I'll get into some experimental new stuff. And sometimes they land, sometimes they don't. And I've learned to not take that as personally, or not rather let that destroy my confidence as much. But here, despite my hiccups in my stage performance, my awkwardness on stage, you know, I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back there. There are some things that make me cringe looking back at this, mostly the pacing, the looking down the whole time like Rain Man, and the fact that I said some things out loud, like some observational comment. That was so, I hate that I did that. But, I start recording every set now so that I can look back and see little ticks, little things that I do, and I can pick them apart. I haven't gone back this far in quite a while, but now whenever I do an open mic, I look back, I record it, and I look through the set. Sometimes I use those to put content on my social media, but a lot of what I'm also doing is saying, okay, the audience reacted well to this part of the joke, but not this part of the joke, so I might cut that part out. I'll try it a little bit more, or I'll change it up, and I'll say, oh, here, I broke eye contact with the audience, or I looked down too much, or, you know, I was doing this, I was doing that. I don't, like, destroy myself, but I do try to be honest with the reviewing part. So I figured I'd do that with you guys because, one, I need something to put out for content, and two, I think it's a useful strategy and skill to be able to look back at yourself, be honest with yourself, and improve your comedy from there. So I have improved quite a bit on a lot of these things, and it's kind of interesting to me to see how much I've come along. For the most part, the content is still pretty much in the same wheelhouse. Like, I haven't evolved that much. I still do a lot of dark jokes. I have gotten to more family-friendly comedy stuff, but I've almost completely cut out sexual material just because I think I've just kind of matured to a point where it's not my thing. I don't view the world through that lens anymore of thinking that stuff is as funny. But if you are someone who leans into a lot of sexual humor, I mean, that's on you. It's not, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying that's not my thing. But I would encourage you all to, again, record your sets, give yourself time to develop, learn from your mistakes, and also focus on your improvements. Again, so I pointed out some things that I did well. Things I think I did well are, I remember my jokes. I wasn't super smooth through them, but I got laughs, so that's great. I spoke clearly enough into the microphone that everybody could hear the jokes, even though my voice cracked a bit. The other thing, there's another big thing. Oh, my interaction with the crowd is, even though I'm looking down a lot, I do acknowledge them and kind of talk to them in have a little bit of back and forth, which I think is good to build audience connection. So record all your sets. You don't have to publish anything. You don't have to share it with the world, but use it for your own review purposes. Look for things like your stage presence. How smoothly do you get through the jokes? Are you interacting with the crowd? What is your presence like? I've improved a lot, I think, since then. I think you would see a big difference between this and what I do now. And I feel more confident on stage. And I think that's what's most important. So the real secret is just going out and practicing. Getting out there, getting the stage time, being able to do more stuff confidently, and make the audience have fun. If you like this video, if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, I don't want to react to every single video I do. I think that sounds kind of self-aggrandizing and narcissistic, but this was kind of fun looking back at very early sets. And maybe I'll do this with some of my guests. Maybe we'll do segments like that. But if you liked it, click the like button. If you have questions that you'd like me to answer on my podcast, Stage Time, which comes out every Monday at about 8 a.m., leave a comment below, or you could message me on one of my socials, at Travis Valle Comedy, on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can find my podcast on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, and Amazon Music. And, yeah, thanks for watching.